My journey begins with Eleanor Thompson, Ellie to those who know me. At 76, I've finally gathered the courage to tell my tale. Time has left its mark. My once dark hair now snow white, my hands etched with lines that tell their own stories, my eyes reflecting the weariness of decades past. People often remark on my resilience, claiming I've withstood trials that would break most spirits. Yet if you heard the full account of my experiences, you might be puzzled by my continued existence. Hardship has been my constant companion. Since childhood, I learned the harsh lesson that our world holds no guarantees of kindness, and those entrusted with your care might deliver you to suffering without a backward glance.
I want to pause for a moment. If you feel the love and are still listening to my story, please subscribe and hit the like button on the Grandparents Memories channel to show your support. Thank you so much.
As a child, I endured the unthinkable. My foster mother traded me away to a stranger. This transaction haunted me for decades as I grappled with understanding her motivation. What drives a guardian to surrender a child to unknown hands? What circumstances could possibly justify abandoning me without any explanation? For the longest time, I convinced myself it stemmed from a lack of affection, that I represented an unwanted responsibility she eagerly discarded. I couldn't have been more mistaken. The actual reason surpassed my darkest imaginings, a truth I only uncovered when I finally confronted the shadows of my history. But to comprehend that revelation, we must first revisit that pivotal moment, the day that irreversibly altered the course of my existence. I didn't know what fear was until that moment. Sarah stopped in front of him and squeezed my hand tightly. "It's done." Her voice was shaky, almost a whisper. The man nodded, reached into his pocket, and pulled out a wad of cash. He counted some bills and shoved them into her hand. At that moment, something inside me screamed. Something told me I needed to run, that I needed to get away from there before it was too late. But Sarah held my hand so tightly that it hurt my bones. "Please, Mom, what's happening?" It was the first time I saw her cry. She said nothing, just knelt in front of me, held my face with her cold hands, and whispered, "Forgive me, my daughter." Then she stood up and turned away, started walking without looking back. "Mom!" I screamed desperately, trying to run after her, but the man grabbed me by the arm before I could take a step. I squinted, struggling to break free. "Let me go! Mom, don't leave me!" But she was already far away, walking hurriedly as if fleeing from my voice was enough to erase what she had just done. That day, I learned in the worst way that a mother's love isn't always what it should be, and that some goodbyes are final. The man put me in the car roughly. I sat in the back seat with tears streaming down my face, not understanding what was happening. He started the engine without saying anything. The silence was unbearable. "Where are we going?" My voice came out choked. He didn't answer, just gave me a cold look in the rearview mirror. I felt a lump in my throat. That's when I realized my life would never be the same again. The car drove for hours. The familiar houses and streets were left behind. The road turned into the interstate highway I-90, surrounded by tall grass. My heart raced more and more. The only thing I knew was that I was going to a place where no one would find me, and no one would come to save me. We arrived at an isolated farm in rural Montana. The sky was already dark when the car stopped in front of an old house with broken windows and doors creaking in the wind. My whole body was trembling. The man got out of the car and opened my door. "Get out," he ordered. I hesitated. He didn't like that. He grabbed my arm forcefully and pulled me out. "I don't want any trouble with you, girl. Do what I say, and you won't have reasons to regret it." Regret was all I felt. I wanted to go back in time, go back home, even with all the difficulties, go back to my foster mother, even if she wasn't affectionate. Any place would be better than that one. He dragged me into the house and locked the door behind me. That's when I understood. From that moment on, I was no longer a child. I was a prisoner. The smell inside that house was different from anything I had ever experienced. A mix of old dust, damp wood, and something that seemed rotten. The man, Frank Miller, locked the door behind me with a metallic click and threw the key on a cracked wooden table. My heart was beating so hard it felt like it would jump out of my chest. The light was weak, yellowish, flickering as if it might go out at any moment. My entire body was shaking. I wanted to speak, wanted to ask why I was there, wanted to beg him to let me go back to my foster mother, but my voice simply wouldn't come out. He took off his hat and threw it on the table. His hair was thin and gray, but his face had a weight of years that seemed greater than his real age. His dark eyes stared at me with a coldness I had never seen before. "You're small, you'll be trouble at first, but you'll learn." I swallowed hard. "Learn what?" He pointed to a narrow wooden staircase that led upstairs. "The room is up there. Go." My legs didn't move. Something inside me told me not to go up, to run away from there, to find a way to escape. But I didn't know where to run. The car had brought us far, very far from home. I had no idea where I was. And the only thing I knew was that this man was not someone who would accept no for an answer. So I obeyed. My feet stepped slowly on the worn steps, each one creaking under my weight. I reached the hallway and found a half-open door. Inside was a thin mattress thrown on the floor and a small dirty window that let in only a weak beam of moonlight. The room was cold. There was nothing but the mattress and some old boxes stacked in the corner. The smell of mold was strong. The wind blew through small cracks in the wooden wall, creating a low howl in the environment. I heard his footsteps climbing the stairs right behind me, and my body stiffened. He stopped at the door and looked me up and down. "From now on, this is your home. Don't try to leave. Don't try to escape. If you obey, you don't need to be afraid." My heart froze. Don't need to be afraid? How could I not be afraid of someone who had locked me in a house in the middle of nowhere? He threw a piece of ham sandwich on the floor near the mattress. "This is what you have for today. If you want more, you'll have to earn it." After that, he left and locked the door. The sound of the latch being turned made me shudder. He had really locked me in. I was alone. Alone in an unknown place, locked in a cold room, not knowing what awaited me. The silence was deafening. I curled up on the thin mattress, hugging my own legs. Fear squeezed my chest in a way I had never felt before. The tears came without me being able to control them. My body sobbed. My throat hurt from holding back the crying, but I didn't want him to hear me. I wanted my foster mother. I wanted to understand why she left me there. Would she come to get me? Was this a mistake? Would I go back home when the sun rose, but something told me no. The night was long. I couldn't sleep. Every creak of the wood, every gust of wind outside, every breath of mine seemed louder than it should be. Then I heard something. Footsteps downstairs. Frank was pacing back and forth. He seemed restless, seemed to be waiting for something or someone. My heart raced. Suddenly I heard voices. Someone else had arrived. I crawled to the door and pressed my ear against the wood. "Are you sure no one will come looking for her?" The voice was deep, hoarse, and seemed concerned. Her mother assured me no one will miss her, said she was dead weight. My blood froze. Dead weight? Was that how my foster mother saw me? Well, if that's the case, what about him? He doesn't know anything yet, but he will soon. Silence. The other voice lowered to almost a whisper. If he finds out, he'll want to take her for himself. And if that happens, it's his problem. You know what happens to people who mess with him. Frank laughed, but it wasn't a laugh of joy. It was a dry, bitter laugh. I'm not afraid of him. The conversation stopped there. I heard footsteps going away, the door creaking, and then absolute silence. My heart was beating so hard I could hear it in my ears. What did that mean? Who was he? Who was this person who might want to take me for himself? I closed my eyes and tried to remember my foster mother's face, but all I saw was her silhouette moving away, her empty gaze, her goodbye without explanation. At that moment, I knew I couldn't hope she would come back. I was alone, and if I wanted to get out of there, I would have to find a way on my own. The night was long. Sleep came in short fragments, always torn from me whenever a noise from outside echoed through the house. My eyes burned. My body ached from being curled up on that thin mattress. But what hurt the most was the fear of what would happen to me, the fear of never seeing my foster mother again, the fear of discovering that perhaps I really was dead weight. I tried to convince myself that she would come back, that perhaps Frank had lied, that my foster mother wouldn't have the courage to abandon me like that. But his words echoed in my head like hammer blows. She sold me. She handed me over to that man in exchange for American dollars. And from the way he spoke, this wasn't something she had done on impulse. She knew exactly what she was doing. But why? What would make her leave me there? The first ray of sun crossed the dirty window of the room and illuminated the dust floating in the air. My stomach growled. The ham sandwich that Frank had thrown at me was still on the floor, but it was hard to eat when it felt like a knot was stuck in my throat. The air inside was suffocating. I hugged my knees, trying to hold back the tears. What would happen to me now? Would I be trapped there forever? He said I would have to earn my food. What did that mean? These thoughts were interrupted by the sound of the latch turning. My body froze. The door to the room opened slowly, creaking. Frank appeared in the doorway, staring at me with those deep, empty eyes. "Get up." I hesitated. "Get up," he repeated impatiently. With my heart racing, I forced my legs to move. The wooden floor was cold under my bare feet. He took a step back and pointed to the stairs. "Go down." My breath caught in my chest. I didn't want to go down, but if I said that, I knew it could be worse. I swallowed hard and started walking, feeling each step creak under my weight. The air downstairs was heavy, loaded with a strange smell, like old cigarettes mixed with something sour. When I reached the last step, I saw that the kitchen table was set, a cup of black American coffee cooling next to a piece of bacon. My stomach turned. Frank sat down and lit a Marlboro cigarette. "Sit down." My legs seemed stuck to the floor. "I'm not hungry." He narrowed his eyes. "You will eat." I blinked quickly, trying to contain the tremor in my body. He pulled out a chair for me and pounded his fist on the table as if he was losing patience. I approached slowly and sat down. "Eat." My fingers touched the hard, cold bacon. My stomach begged for food, but my heart was poisoned by fear. I took a small piece to my mouth, chewing slowly while he watched me. Then he said something that made my spine freeze. "Do you know why you're here?" The piece of bacon stopped in my throat. "Your mother said you were smart. Let's see if that's true." I didn't know what to answer. I don't know why I'm here." He let out a dry laugh. "Of course you do." My body stiffened. "Your mother didn't tell you anything, did she?" I shook my head slowly. He smiled, but it wasn't a smile of amusement. It was a cruel smile from someone who knew something I didn't know. "Interesting." I remained silent, waiting for him to continue, but he just stared at me, took a drag on his cigarette, and tapped the ashes on the edge of the plate. "Today, you're going to work." My skin crawled. "Work? Do you think you're here for free?" I swallowed hard. What do I have to do?" He leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. "You're going to learn to obey." My heart was beating so hard it seemed about to leap from my chest. I didn't know what that meant, but something inside me told me I was about to find out. The day was long. He made me clean the entire house, scrub the floor until my fingers went numb, carry cold water until my nails turned purple. I had never worked like that. My arm ached, my legs were weak, but I didn't dare complain. With each order he gave, I obeyed without hesitation. I knew I had no choice. When the sun began to set, I was so exhausted I could barely stand. He looked me up and down and let out a grunt of approval. "At least you learn fast." My entire body wanted to collapse. I just wanted to lie down on the hard mattress and pretend none of this was real. But then he said something that made me freeze. "If you continue like this, maybe I won't even need to take you to him." My breathing stopped. Him. That was the second time I heard about this him. Who was this person? Why did he talk as if I belonged to someone? Frank noticed my confused look and smiled crookedly. "Ah, so you still don't know?" My heart raced. He stood up, took a glass and filled it with bourbon whiskey. He drank it in one gulp and looked at me again. "Don't worry, girl. Soon enough, you'll meet your real owner." My eyes widened. Owner? What did that mean? My mind screamed, but I didn't dare ask. Fear had already taken over me, and for the first time, I wished my foster mother had left me to die on the street. Night came with a cutting cold. The wind blew strongly, making the old windows of the house creak as if they were complaining about the weather. I curled up on the thin mattress, hugging my own legs, feeling my entire body ache after a full day of forced labor. My fingers were cut from scrubbing the floor. My back throbbed from carrying heavy buckets of dirty water. But what hurt the most wasn't my body. It was my mind, the constant fear, the fear of what would come the next day, the fear of who this he was that Frank mentioned. I still didn't know what would happen to me, but one thing was certain. I wasn't just an abandoned child. I had been sold for something much worse. I needed to escape, but how do you escape from a place you don't even know where it is? I sighed, closing my eyes for a moment, trying to calm down. But the absolute silence of the house was broken by the sound of a car stopping outside. My heart froze. Heavy footsteps echoed on the porch, the door creaked. Someone entered the house. My breath caught in my chest. Where is she? The voice was deep, dry, with a tone of impatience. My entire body shivered. It was him, the man Frank had been talking about. Frank got up from his chair and walked slowly to the door. She's upstairs, still too small, still a bit skittish, but learns quickly. You know I don't have patience to wait. I know, but you have to have it. If you do it wrong, there will be problems.
I want to pause for a moment. If you feel the love and are still listening to my story, please subscribe and hit the like button on the Grandparents Memories channel to show your support. Thank you so much.
Silence. I crawled slowly across the mattress, trying to move away from the door. The wood creaked under the weight of the mysterious man's footsteps. He was coming up. My heart felt like it would explode. The doorknob turned. My blood froze. But before the door opened completely, another sound came from outside the house. A muffled sound, as if something had been knocked over. The man stopped. What was that? Silence hung in the air. Frank, who had bought me, responded with a tense voice. Someone's here. A chill ran down my spine. Another person? The man with the deep voice seemed suspicious. If someone's watching you, we're dead. I heard the sound of a Colt 45 being cocked. My breath caught in my throat. The door to my room slammed shut. They were concerned about something else. Someone else. Someone had found us. My heart was beating so hard I could hear it in my ears. Frank hurried down the stairs, and I heard the sound of drawers being rummaged through, objects falling to the floor. He was grabbing something, a gun. I heard the door being opened again, this time with brutality. Is someone there? Frank's voice called out. Silence, only the sound of the wind whistling. They went out for a few seconds. I remained motionless, listening to their footsteps moving away. And then for the first time, I looked at the small, dirty window of the room. My entire body was trembling, but something inside me said, this was my only chance. If I didn't escape now, maybe I never would. Crawling to the wall, I held the window frame and stretched as far as I could. The latch was old, the wood was rotten. I just had to push hard. I bit my lip, holding back tears, and then, with all the strength my small body could gather, I pushed the window outward. It opened with a dry bang. My heart raced. I had no time. I couldn't think. I just acted. I crawled through the windowsill and looked down. The house was tall, and the fall would be painful, but it was better than what awaited me if I stayed there. I closed my eyes and jumped. The impact was brutal. My body hit the hard, dry ground, knocking what little air remained in my lungs. Pain radiated through my legs, through my arms, through my chest, but I couldn't afford the luxury of feeling pain Couldn't waste time. I needed to run. The voices inside the house still echoed, and I knew that in a matter of seconds, they would realize I was no longer there. I forced myself to get up, my legs trembling as if they might collapse at any moment. The tall grass around the house was dense, thorny, cutting my skin as I blindly advanced through the darkness of the night. My heart hammered inside my chest. Behind me, I heard the front door being flung open. She escaped. The shout made panic consume me. My breathing was uneven. My bare feet stepped on stones, dry branches, cold earth. Each step was agony, but I couldn't stop. The sounds behind me grew louder. They were looking for me. I heard heavy footsteps crushing the grass, heard curses, heard orders, "Find her now!" Fear suffocated me. My mind screamed, "Run, run, run!" But where to? I didn't know where I was. I didn't know where to go. I just knew that if they caught me, I wouldn't have another chance. Tears streamed down my face, mixing with the sweat and dust that stuck to my skin. The forest seemed endless. The branches closed around me like claws trying to hold me back. Then I saw a clearing ahead. There was a dirt road. My legs were weak, but I gathered what strength I had left and ran toward it, stumbling, gasping with blurred vision. If I could reach it, maybe then a headlight, lights, a car. My eyes widened. Someone was coming. It was my chance. I used the last of my strength to run to the middle of the road, extending my arms, desperately waving. "Please, help!" The car braked abruptly, the tires raising dust. The door opened. I froze. And then, from the other side of the road, I heard him, the man they had been talking about, the real owner, the man to whom my foster mother had sold me. My body locked up. My eyes met his, and at that instant, I knew my hell was just beginning. The man standing before me was different from anyone I had ever seen. He didn't seem rushed, didn't show fury or desperation like the others who had been hunting me moments before. On the contrary, he seemed calm, and that terrified me more than any shout. His face was partially covered by the shadow of the dark hat, but his eyes shone like those of a predator observing prey. He took a step in my direction, and my body froze. "So it was you who caused me all this headache." My breath caught in my throat. Behind me, I heard the footsteps of the other men approaching, running down the dirt road, cursing and puffing. "The girl escaped! We got her!" one of them shouted, but his voice faltered as soon as he realized who was there. Silence fell like a blow in the air. All the others froze, paralyzed. That figure in front of me wasn't one of them. He was above them. My stomach turned. This was the man to whom my foster mother had sold me. This was the real master of my destiny. I wanted to run, wanted to scream, wanted to beg, but my body wouldn't obey. It was he who broke the silence. Who gave permission to hurt her? Frank, who had bought me first, the one who had kept me prisoner, tried to explain. She was being difficult. She needed to learn. The other man laughed, a low laugh, a laugh without joy. And then, without warning, he raised his hand and delivered a dry blow to Frank's face. The sound echoed down the road. I shuddered. Frank fell to his knees, holding his reddened cheek, his eyes wide with fear. James Blackwood, the man who had struck him, knelt beside him, tilting his head as if observing something curious. I asked who gave permission to touch her. I was just trying to keep her under control. The smile on James's face disappeared. And you failed. The silence was cut by the sound of a gunshot. My body locked up. James didn't even hesitate. He just pulled out the gun, shot Frank, and put it back as if he had merely shooed away an annoying insect. The others didn't move. No one ran, no one reacted. It was as if this was expected, as if he had the right to do that. I couldn't breathe. My heart felt like it would explode in my chest. He turned to me. Now that we've resolved this, come. My mind screamed, run, run now! But I couldn't. My feet were planted in the ground, my breathing short and trembling. He extended his hand. Or would you prefer that I carry you? Terror took over me. My eyes moved to the sides, trying to find an exit, but the other men were still there, watching him in silence. I had no escape. I swallowed hard, and with trembling legs, I took my first step toward the true master of my destiny. James smiled, and I knew at that instant that my struggle was just beginning. My feet barely touched the ground. My body was shaking so much that the simple idea of walking seemed impossible, but I had no choice. James Blackwood, the man with the cold gaze, walked in front of me without hurry, as if he already knew I wouldn't have the courage to run, as if he was certain I already belonged to him. The silence around us was suffocating. Behind us, the other men remained standing, showing no reaction to the body fallen on the ground. No word was spoken, no lamentation, no remorse. The only thing that could be heard was the wind blowing the dust from the road. I felt that at any moment my legs would fail. My heart was beating so fast that I could almost hear nothing beyond the sound of my own despair. James opened the car door. Get in. My throat was dry. Every cell in my body screamed for me not to obey. But what would happen if I didn't get in? I had just seen what he was capable of. I knew that if I tried to resist, the outcome could be even worse. I had no strength to run. I had nowhere to go. I simply gave up. I got into the car without saying a word. The door closed beside me with a dry bang. James went around, got into the driver's seat, and started the engine. The car began to move. It was at this moment that I truly felt it. I was leaving. Where to? I didn't know, but one thing was certain. If I didn't escape now, maybe I never would. The silence inside the car was terrifying. I couldn't look at him, couldn't even breathe properly. My gaze was fixed on the road outside, on the arid fields that passed quickly by the window. I tried to memorize each curve, each tree, each detail, as if somehow this could help me escape later. But everything looked the same. The same dry ground, the same cloudy sky, the same despair inside my chest. James drove calmly, as if he were taking any ordinary trip. One hand rested on the steering wheel while the other held a Marlboro cigarette between his fingers. He didn't seem worried. He didn't seem upset. He simply existed, and that scared me more than anything else. Minutes passed, perhaps hours, and then he spoke for the first time. You have a name? My throat locked up. I didn't know if I should answer. If I spoke, I would be accepting my situation. If I remained silent, he might get irritated. I breathed deeply, trying to gather any fragment of courage that still remained in me. Eleanor, I said quietly. He smiled slightly. Eleanor, he repeated, as if testing the word in his mouth. Beautiful name. Your mother chose well. My breathing faltered. I wanted to ask, I wanted to demand answers. Why did she do this to me? Why did she sell me? But I knew it wouldn't help. He was the only person in that car who knew all the answers, and apparently, he wasn't in any hurry to give me any of them. He took a drag on his cigarette, slowly released the smoke, and looked at me out of the corner of his eye. You're smart, Eleanor? I swallowed hard. What did that mean? What did he want to know? I think so, he chuckled softly. Excellent. That will make things easier. Fear spread through my body like poison. What did he mean by that? What did he want from me? My stomach turned. I didn't know where I was going, but somehow I knew that when I arrived, my life would never be the same. The car continued down the deserted road, and the silence between us was so suffocating it was almost deafening. The engine hummed low, and the strong smell of the cigarette permeated the air, mixing with the smell of dust that entered through the crack in the window. I didn't look at him. I couldn't. My gaze was fixed on the road, trying to memorize any detail, any curve, anything that might give me a clue as to where we were going. But everything looked the same nothingness, the same endless desert, the same feeling that I was getting further and further away from any hope. The only thing I had left was fear, and it was there, consuming me like a shadow inside my chest. James drove calmly, one hand on the wheel, the other holding the cigarette that was now burning down to the filter. He seemed relaxed, as if he were just taking an ordinary trip, and that terrified me even more, because to him, I wasn't a frightened girl. I wasn't someone who had been torn from her own home. I was just a package being transported, and I knew that packages, once delivered, don't go back home. Time passed strangely. I didn't know if we had been on the road for minutes or hours. My body ached from the position I was sitting in, but I didn't dare move. Then he broke the silence. Are you afraid, Eleanor? My breathing faltered. The question caught me by surprise. I didn't know if he expected an answer. He turned his face slightly toward me, his dark eyes analyzing me. You don't need to be afraid of me. The way he said that made my skin crawl. I had heard that phrase before, and whenever someone said it, it was because I had reasons to be afraid. He threw the cigarette out the window and returned to focusing on the road. You think your mother doesn't love you, don't you? My throat locked up. I didn't answer, but my silence was answer enough. He smiled slightly, as if he knew exactly what was going on inside my head. But what if I told you that your mother handed you over to me to save you? My body stiffened. What was he saying? How could Sarah selling me to a stranger be considered saving me? I wanted to ask, but my voice was stuck. I just stared at him, waiting. He laughed softly, shaking his head. Ah, Eleanor, you still have so much to discover. I wanted to scream. I wanted him to stop this game. I wanted him to simply tell me what was happening, because that uncertainty was killing me. But he didn't seem to be in a hurry, because he knew something I didn't know, and for some reason, he enjoyed seeing me trapped in that anguish. The car began to slow down. My eyes returned to the road, and that's when I saw it. A huge iron gate, rusty, covered with vines and moss. Behind it was a property surrounded by tall, dense trees that prevented any view of what lay beyond. My heart beat harder. We were arriving. I didn't know where, but something inside me screamed that this was a place I should never have approached. James took out a small remote control and pressed a button. The gate creaked and began to open slowly, revealing a stone road that led into the property. He drove unhurriedly, the tires making a dry noise against the ground. And then I saw the house. It was an old Victorian mansion, imposing, with large windows and a long porch that seemed to have belonged to another era. But time had been cruel to that place.
I want to pause for a moment. If you feel the love and are still listening to my story, please subscribe and hit the like button on the Grandparents Memories channel to show your support. Thank you so much.
The walls were peeling, the roof had broken parts, and the garden around it seemed to have been forgotten for years. The car stopped in front of the entrance. My heart hammered inside my chest. He turned off the engine and looked at me. "Welcome to your new home." My mouth went dry. I didn't want to get out of the car. I didn't want to step into that place. But then the front door of the mansion opened, and a figure appeared at the entrance. It was a woman, tall, thin, wearing a dark dress that reached her ankles. Her hair was pulled back in a tight bun, and her eyes were small, sharp, evaluating everything with a look of superiority. She saw me inside the car and smiled, but it wasn't a welcoming smile. It was the smile of someone who already knew exactly what was going to happen to me. A shiver ran down my spine. James opened the door beside me and gestured with his head. "Come on, Eleanor. Don't make me lose my patience." My legs were trembling, but I knew I had no choice. I got out of the car. The woman, Martha Blackwood, continued to observe me, motionless like a statue. Then James turned to her. "Here she is." Martha smiled again, slightly inclining her head. "Perfect." My stomach turned. What did that mean? I felt the blood drain from my face. I wanted to run. I wanted to flee. But before I could think of anything, Martha turned and began walking into the house. James placed his hand firmly on my shoulder. "Let's go." And then I was led into the house, not knowing that once I crossed that door, I would never be the same again. The mansion door closed behind me with a muffled, dull sound. The air inside was heavy, loaded with a sweet, nauseating smell mixed with old dust and damp wood. The tall windows let in only a sliver of moonlight, creating long shadows on the worn walls. Every detail of that place seemed to have come from a nightmare. Martha walked slowly ahead of us, her steps echoing on the stone floor, and her black dress moving gently with her calculated walk. James kept his hand firmly on my shoulder, guiding me without hurry, but also without giving me space to hesitate. I didn't know what to expect, but something inside me said that nothing good awaited me there. We were led down a narrow corridor, the walls covered with dusty portraits of people who seemed from another era. The eyes in the paintings seemed to follow me, as if they were watching me, analyzing me, waiting for something. My heart hammered inside my chest. Martha stopped before a double door of dark wood. She placed her hand on the doorknob, but didn't open it immediately. Instead, she turned slowly to me, her small, sharp eyes scanning me from head to toe, as if examining me. Then, she spoke for the first time. "How old is she?" My skin crawled. James answered casually, 6 years. She tilted her head slightly, as if pondering the information. "She seems more fragile than I imagined. My stomach turned. Fragile? What did that mean? Before I could understand what was happening, Martha opened the door and gestured for us to enter. James pushed me gently inside, and then I saw what was there. The room was large, but almost empty. There was only a long table in the center, and at the back, a huge unlit fireplace with a leather armchair facing us. The silence was sepulchral. Then a sound, a click. The armchair began to turn slowly, and when I finally saw who was sitting there, my heart stopped. The leather armchair creaked as it turned slowly. Time seemed to drag on, as if the very air was too heavy to move. My heart was beating so hard that I felt the pulse in my temples, each beat a deafening drum inside my head. And then finally, I saw him. The man sitting in the armchair was different from all the others, different from James, who had brought me there, different from Martha, who looked at me with that analytical, cold gaze. He was elegant. His black suit was impeccable, his hair combed back without a single hair out of place. He had fine features, a face without wrinkles, but his eyes, the eyes. His eyes didn't belong to an ordinary human being. There was something there, something empty, something too deep, something that made me feel as if I wasn't just in front of a man, but something greater than I could ever understand. He smiled. Eleanor. My skin crawled. He knew my name. I couldn't speak. I couldn't move. I could only stare at him, hypnotized by the tone of his voice, by the way he pronounced my name, as if he had known me for a very long time. James approached, slightly bowing his head in a sign of respect. Here she is, as you requested, sir. The man in the armchair didn't take his eyes off me. You did well. My throat was dry. What was happening? Why was I brought there? And more importantly, who was he? Martha, who was standing by the door, moved silently, walking until she was behind the armchair. She seems fragile. Are you sure she's the right one? The man gave a small smile. Don't be deceived by appearances, my dear. The most valuable things in this world come in delicate packages. My mind screamed to understand what they were talking about. I was valuable? To whom? For what? My breathing became heavy. Why am I here? My voice came out trembling, small. The man in the armchair tilted his head slightly to the side, as if genuinely surprised by the question. Your mother didn't tell you? My eyes widened. My mother? My mother knew about this? I shook my head quickly, denying it. The man sighed, as if he were dealing with a foolish child. Then I suppose we'll have to tell you. He got up slowly, and at that moment I knew. I didn't want to know the truth. I didn't want to hear it. Because whatever the explanation was, it was worse than I could imagine. The man took a step forward, and I instinctively backed away, but I had nowhere to run. Behind me, the door was closed. Martha and James were there, motionless, watching as if this scene had been repeated countless times. My chest rose and fell too quickly. My breathing was erratic, as if my body was trying to absorb all the oxygen in the environment before something terrible happened. And then he spoke again. Eleanor, my dear, you have no idea who you really are, do you? My hands were cold. He took another step, and with each movement of his, my fear grew. Your mother made a great sacrifice to keep you away from me, but in the end, everyone returns to where they belong. I felt my throat close. What are you talking about? My voice came out low, almost a whisper. He smiled. It was a gentle smile, a paternal smile, and that terrified me even more. I'm talking about your destiny, my little one. About your place in the world, about something that has always been inside you, even if no one has told you. The warmth of the environment seemed to disappear. My fingers trembled. My mother sold me to you for money? The man let out a low laugh. Money? Ah, my dear, no. Your mother didn't sell me for money. She tried to hide you from me. My vision darkened for a second. What was he saying? My mother tried to hide me from him? That doesn't make sense. He tilted his head slightly to the side, watching me as if I were a chess piece that had finally moved to the right place. Your mother did everything so you would never know the truth. You feel it, don't you? I frowned, trying to ignore the wave of despair that was building inside me. What was I supposed to feel? His eyes gleamed in the dimness of the room. That you never belonged to the world where you grew up. That there's something different about you, something that separates you from all other people, something your mother desperately tried to bury. My lips were trembling. I wanted to deny it. I wanted to say he was wrong, but something inside me knew he was right. Since I was little, I always felt there was something about me that didn't make sense, something that made me different, something my mother never explained to me, but that I saw in her eyes when she looked at me. Fear. She was afraid of me, or rather, afraid of what I might become. I swallowed hard. My mother sold me to get away from you? Why? James's smile grew, but his eyes remained empty. Because she knew that sooner or later you would return to me. My heart raced. What do you mean by that? He took a step even closer until I could smell the woody scent of his cologne. You never belonged to her. You never belonged to that world. She tried to deny that her whole life, tried to hide you, but you were born to be here. I shook my head, backing away. No, that doesn't make sense. She was my mother. He smiled, but there was something cruel in that smile. It was as if the ground beneath my feet had begun to tremble. My vision blurred for an instant. My stomach turned. I wanted to say he was lying. I wanted to say that my mother was my mother, period. But there was something inside me, something that told me I never knew the whole truth. His eyes penetrated mine. She raised you, but you are not hers. My chest tightened. What do you mean by that? The silence in the room became unbearable, and then he whispered, You are my daughter, mine alone. My world collapsed. My breath caught in my chest. That word echoed in my mind like thunder. You are my daughter, mine alone. No, it couldn't be true. He was lying. My mother had always been my mother. She had always been there, always been hard, always been cold, but she was my mother. I shook my head, trying to push away the idea. That's a lie. My voice came out trembling but firm. The man wasn't fazed. He just watched me as if he were waiting for the truth to settle inside me. A lie? Do you feel it's a lie, Eleanor? Do you feel inside you that I'm lying? My lips parted, but no word came out. Because deep down, I wasn't sure. His smile grew as if he were reading my mind. You always knew you were different. You always felt it. Your mother tried to hide you from me because she knew she couldn't stop me forever, but she made a mistake. She thought that by keeping you away, she would make that part of you disappear. He leaned forward slightly. But what's inside you can't be erased. My fingers were cold. My entire body was trembling. If you're telling the truth, my voice almost failed. Why did my mother raise me? Why did she keep me close if I was never hers? He took a deep breath, as if he were about to reveal something important. Behind him, Martha remained motionless, her gaze analyzing each of my reactions as if she were studying a caged animal. Why did your mother steal you from me? The air in the room seemed to evaporate. My heart stopped for a second. I blinked slowly, trying to absorb the weight of those words. She stole me? He nodded without taking his eyes off me. She ran away with you when you were still a baby. She hid like a rat, living on the margins of society, doing everything so I would never find her. But I always knew that one day you would return to me. My chest tightened. My mind was spinning, trying to put the pieces of the puzzle together. If this was true, then everything made sense. My mother's fearful look, the way she avoided me, how she never hugged me, how she always seemed to carry an invisible weight on her shoulders. She didn't raise me out of love. She raised me because she hid me, because she was running from something, or rather, from someone. My stomach turned. If all this is true, what do you want from me? The man smiled again, but this time there was something dark in that smile. He took a step forward until he was so close that I could feel his presence like a weight in the air. And then he whispered, I want you to accept who you really are. My heart raced, and it was at this moment that I knew the truth he was telling me was just the beginning of my worst nightmare. My head was spinning. His words still echoed in my mind, hitting me like invisible blows. I want you to accept who you really are. I didn't know what that meant, and at the same time, I knew I didn't want to find out. My breathing was short, heavy, as if the very air inside that house was against me. My knees were weak, my throat dry, and all I wanted was to scream, run, disappear. But there was nowhere to run. He was in front of me, my father, looking at me as if he knew something I didn't yet know, as if he were waiting for something inside me to awaken. Martha remained motionless behind him, observing me with that analytical, impersonal gaze. She knew. The others in the room knew. Everyone there knew something about me that I didn't yet know, and that terrified me. My chest rose and fell rapidly. My body trembled. I am not any of that. My voice came out trembling, weak, as if even I didn't believe my own words. The man smiled. Are you sure? My heart stopped, because no, I wasn't sure. I never had been. As far back as I could remember, I always felt something different inside me, something I couldn't explain. My mother never talked about it, but I saw it in her eyes. She was afraid of me. Now I knew why. I swallowed hard. What do you want from me? My voice was a thread. The man took another step forward, and then in a calm tone he whispered, I want you to awaken. A shiver ran down my spine. Awaken? What did that mean? I backed away, my entire body warning that something very wrong was about to happen. He noticed my hesitation and smiled, tilting his head slightly. Your mother tried to prevent this, tried to bury who you really are. But you can't run anymore, my dear. It's in your essence, in your blood. You can feel it, can't you? I wanted to deny it. I wanted to scream that he was wrong. But the instant he said those words, something inside me stirred. It was as if a door was opening, a door that my mother had tried to keep locked my entire life. My heart was beating so hard it felt like it would explode. I didn't know what was happening. The silence inside that house seemed to vibrate in the air, as if the very environment was holding its breath along with me. The man, my father, remained standing before me, waiting. His gaze wasn't one of impatience or hurry. He just analyzed me, as if he knew that something inside me was about to break. And he was right, because I felt it. Something inside me was changing. A warmth began to rise through my chest, different from anything I had ever felt before. It was as if something was awakening under my skin, a silent presence that had always been there, but that my mother had desperately tried to keep dormant. My head throbbed, my body tingled. I breathed deeply, trying to fight against it, but the more I resisted, the stronger it became. The man noticed. He smiled. "Don't fight against it, my daughter. This is your true self."
I want to pause for a moment. If you feel the love and are still listening to my story, please subscribe and hit the like button on the Grandparents Memories channel to show your support. Thank you so much.
My vision darkened for a moment. My heart hammered inside my chest as if it were trying to free itself from something that had imprisoned it for a long time. And then I felt it, not with the common senses, but with something deeper. It was as if my body was connected to something greater, something that had always been there, lurking. The air around me seemed to change, becoming denser. Martha watched attentively, as if she were waiting for the right moment to intervene. And then everything stopped for a second. Time seemed suspended. The wind outside, the rustling of the trees disappeared. The very sound of my heart became muffled. And it was at this instant that everything made sense. My mother hid me because she knew that if I came here, there would be no going back. She knew that the moment I felt this power inside me, I would never be the same again. And worse, she knew I would like it. My chest was rising and falling too quickly. "What's happening to me?" My voice came out hoarse. The man smiled once more, satisfied. "You're awakening." A shockwave ran through my body. I trembled, but it wasn't fear. It was something deeper, something that seemed right. The truth seemed to be there. The silence inside that room was suffocating. My heart hammered inside my chest, each beat stronger than the last. My entire body trembled, but it wasn't from cold. It was the kind of tremor that arises when we know we're about to hear something that will change everything forever. The man in front of me analyzed me with patience. He wasn't in a hurry because he knew I had nowhere to run, because he knew I needed to hear the truth. "Eleanor, your mother tried to hide this from you, but now the time has come." My mind screamed for me to run away from there, to close my ears and pretend none of this was real. But I couldn't, because for the first time, I was about to understand what my mother had tried to hide from me my entire life. My voice came out trembling but firm. "The truth about what?" The man took a step forward, like a predator that senses the smell of the prey's fear. "About you. About who you really are." My throat went dry. My breathing was short and quick, as if I were trying to absorb all the oxygen in the environment before something terrible happened. I shook my head. I'm just an ordinary girl. I'm just... But my voice died before I could finish the sentence, because deep down, I knew I was never just an ordinary girl. My mother had always been hard on me, always avoided talking about my past, always carried an invisible weight in her gaze. And now, in front of that man, everything seemed to make sense. What was he going to tell me? What did he know that I didn't know? The man sighed and tilted his head slightly to the side, as if studying every small movement of mine. And then he said, "The woman you called mother, your entire life stole you from me." My body froze. The world seemed to become a blur around me. What? My voice came out weaker than I would have liked. The man took another step forward, his eyes fixed on mine. "She took you away, Eleanor. You didn't belong to her. You never belonged." My mind was spinning, trying to process those words. I wanted to say he was lying, that it was impossible, but deep down, I knew it was true. The way my mother always looked at me with guilt, the heavy silences when I asked about my childhood, her fear. She had taken me from someone. She had run away with a baby that wasn't hers. I blinked rapidly, trying to contain the growing despair. From me? Why? The man smiled, but there was no joy in his smile. "Because I no longer wanted your mother." That phrase hit me like a punch to the chest. I swallowed hard. "What?" He came closer, his voice now low, almost a whisper. "She loved me. She was obsessed with me, but I no longer wanted her." My stomach turned. My chest hurt as if something was being crushed inside me. "She was your woman?" He let out a dry laugh. "She wanted to be, but I never wanted her. And when I said that everything between us was over, she went out of her mind." My heart hammered. "What did she do?" The silence in the room was so heavy that I felt the air vibrating around them. And then he told me something that made my vision darken for a second. "She took you and ran away." My knees weakened. My mother wasn't my mother. She stole me. But not because she wanted to save me, not because she wanted to protect me, but because she wanted revenge. She used me as a weapon against the man who rejected her. The pieces of the puzzle began to fit together. The way she treated me, the way she looked at me, the way she never talked about love. Because I wasn't a daughter to her. I was a reminder of her revenge. My stomach turned. The man continued to look at me, waiting for me to absorb everything. And then he said the last thing I wanted to hear. "And now, you've returned to where you always should have been." The ground beneath my feet seemed about to collapse. My mind screamed. I wanted to run. I wanted to wake up from this nightmare. But there was nowhere to flee because the truth was already inside me, and I could never go back to being the same again. My head was throbbing. My chest was rising and falling too quickly, as if the very air was being torn from my lungs. His words still echoed inside me. She stole me because he no longer wanted her. My mother, no, the woman who raised me, had taken me not out of love, not because she wanted to protect me, but because she wanted revenge. I was never a wanted baby. I was a weapon. I was a trophy of the sick obsession of a woman who couldn't accept being rejected. My stomach was churning. My throat was dry. James, my father, watched me calmly, unhurriedly, as if he knew my mind was crumbling piece by piece. Now you understand, don't you? His voice was low, almost a whisper. I wanted to answer. I wanted to scream, but nothing came out of my mouth. My mind was spinning. I remembered the fearful looks from that woman, the nights she cried in hiding, the moment when she seemed to carry a weight she couldn't share. She spent her life running, but she never ran for me. She ran because she knew that one day he would find me. And now, here I was in front of him, in front of the man from whom she had spent her entire life trying to hide me. My legs weakened, my knees gave way, I fell to my knees on the cold wooden floor. The tears began to flow before I could stop them. It's not true. My voice came out trembling, broken. The man knelt in front of me, his eyes fixed on mine. But my eyes rose against my own will, and there he was, the man who should have been my father, the man who never looked for me, the man who let me be taken. My chest hurt, my heart hammered. And then the question came, the question that burned inside me like fire. If you knew, why did you never look for me? The man blinked slowly, but showed no surprise. He expected me to ask this. He knew this was the doubt that was eating away at me. He sighed and passed his hand over his face, as if carefully choosing his words before speaking. I did look, Eleanor. My breath caught in my throat. No, it's not true? He nodded. Yes, it is. I looked for you for years, but she was clever. She knew how to hide. She did everything so I would never find her. My mind was spinning. Was he telling the truth, or was it just another lie? Then why now? Why did you only find me now? His gaze became more serious. Because, after so many years, I finally found the right thread to pull. My chest tightened. What thread? Silence took over the room. The man moved away a bit and stood up, passing his hand over his chin as if pondering whether or not he should tell me, and then he said, Because your mother died. My heart stopped. My breathing faltered. The entire world seemed to freeze around me. I blinked. What? The man looked at me seriously. She died, Eleanor, and when that happened, I finally found you. My vision blurred. My mind screamed, refusing to believe. My mother dead? No, this couldn't be true. The woman who spent her life running, who carried me along to all places, who sold me, who abandoned me, she simply died without me knowing, without me being there. My chest hurt in a way I couldn't describe. Because as much as she had hurt me, as much as she had destroyed my childhood, she was still the only mother I knew, and now she was gone. My breathing caught. The air seemed heavy, and then I realized something. You knew where I was the whole time? My voice came out low but sharp. His eyes didn't waver from mine. He didn't deny it. My heart accelerated. You found me after she died because you already knew where I was. He sighed. Yes, I knew. A shock wave ran through my body. My stomach turned. And you never came to get me? My voice finally exploded. The pain, the anger, the confusion, everything collapsed at once. I stood up, my hands trembling, my entire body burning with emotions I couldn't control. "You left me there. You knew where I was, and you left me in that hell." His eyes gleamed for a second, but he maintained his calm. "I couldn't just show up, Eleanor. You wouldn't understand. You needed to come to me." My fists clenched. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run. But I knew I had nowhere to go, because now there was no turning back. I knew the truth, and the truth was a burden I could never carry alone again. The man watched me, waiting for my reaction, waiting for me to absorb everything, waiting for me to accept. But how do you accept something like this? How do you accept that your entire life was built on a lie? My breathing was short. My eyes burned. My mind was tired. I no longer knew what to believe. I no longer knew who I was. And at that moment, I realized the most frightening thing of all. I never knew who I really was. The man, my biological father, watched me with that unsettling calm, as if he were waiting for me to accept the truth. But I wasn't going to accept it, not so easily, because everything he had said so far wasn't enough. I still didn't know who I was, and worse, I didn't know what he wanted from me. My hands were trembling. "And if you knew where I was all this time," my voice came out harsh, loaded with pain and anger accumulated over the years, "why did you never come to get me?" The man blinked slowly. He showed no surprise. He expected this question. "Because you needed to come to me on your own." My fists clenched. I wanted to laugh at the hypocrisy, the arrogance, the absurdity of that response. Needed to come on my own? My voice rose, loaded with incredulity. "I was a child. You let me grow up in the middle of hell because you thought I needed to find out for myself?" The man sighed and passed his hand over his face, as if he were tired. "You wouldn't have understood before, Eleanor. You needed to go through all of this to see the truth." A wave of fury ran through my body. What truth? What kind of father lets his daughter be sold and treated like an object? I didn't realize I was shouting until I felt my throat hurt. But I didn't care, because I needed to shout. I had spent my entire life swallowing my pain, accepting that I was unwanted, disposable, forgotten. But now I knew that the man who could have saved me was there the whole time, and he did nothing. My eyes burned. "You didn't try to save me. You left me behind." The man remained silent for a few seconds. Then he took a step back, as if he were analyzing me from a different angle. And then he said something that made my blood freeze. "And yet you survived." My breath caught in my chest. My stomach turned. He wasn't denying it. He wasn't trying to justify himself. He was just telling me what he saw. I wasn't a victim in his vision. I was someone who survived. I was proof that he was right. And that made me even more furious. "Surviving doesn't mean I'm okay." My voice came out low, loaded with resentment. He smiled slightly. "But you're here." I swallowed hard, because somehow that was true. I had been through hell, been rejected, sold, betrayed, but I was here. I was alive. That doesn't justify everything, and that doesn't make you my father. My gaze hardened. "You made me, but you were never a father." The smile disappeared. In fact, his face changed, because for the first time, I saw something different in his eyes. Something human, something that seemed like regret. But I wasn't going to delude myself. I couldn't, because in the end, nothing he said could change the past. And for the first time, I understood. Nothing he said mattered because he didn't define me. He wasn't the owner of my story. I didn't need to be a prisoner of his decisions. I didn't need to be a prisoner of my past. And it was at this moment that I knew I had two choices. I could continue living trapped by what happened to me, or I could finally move forward. And I knew which choice my mother never made. She spent her life running, carrying pain, hurt, and hatred, and in the end, she died without ever having freed herself. I didn't want that fate for me. I wanted something more. My breathing began to slow. My heart was still heavy. My soul was still hurt, but now I knew what I needed to do. I raised my gaze, firm. I don't know who I am, but I know who I don't want to be. The man frowned slightly, confused. I continued. I don't want to spend the rest of my life looking for someone to blame. I don't want to carry this weight. I don't want to be like her. I saw something gleam in his eyes. Then, what do you want to be? I closed my eyes for a moment, breathed deeply, and then I said, free. The silence that followed was different from all the others. It wasn't a silence of fear, of submission, of despair. It was a silence of decision, of liberation. And at that moment I knew I would never again be a prisoner of my past. I would never again let my story be written by the mistakes of others. I was going to start over, and this time I would write the ending myself. The sun hit my skin differently that morning. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel fear when I opened my eyes. There were no screams, no invisible chains binding me to the past. There was only the wind touching my face, and the distant recovery came gradually. Healing wasn't immediate. The wounds needed time to mend. During quiet evenings, memories would still surface, sending shivers through me when darkness settled too heavily. Yet incrementally, I discovered how to channel my terror into resilience. I ventured into employment, carefully setting aside earnings, creating something uniquely mine. I came to understand that existence isn't merely defined by our circumstances. Rather, it's shaped by our response to those circumstances. I made a conscious decision to shed the identity of a victim and instead rebuild myself from within.
I want to pause for a moment. If you feel the love and are still listening to my story, please subscribe and hit the like button on the Grandparents Memories channel to show your support. Thank you so much.
Over time, I deliberately cultivated relationships with individuals who nourished my spirit. Trust, once shattered, slowly reformed. I recognized that genuine affection exists without demands or suffering. The revelation came that I warranted more than mere survival. I deserved fulfillment. Then it happened, one ordinary morning. Glancing at my reflection, I encountered something previously absent: serenity. My narrative contains unspeakable cruelty. I endured experiences no human should face. Yet I persevered. Beyond mere endurance, I evolved into someone whose essence couldn't be extinguished by suffering. After all, our hardships don't determine who we are. Our identity stems from what we choose to do with those hardships. I elected happiness. I granted myself forgiveness. I extended forgiveness to my mother. I relegated the past to its proper place, behind me. Life continues its forward motion, and now I can confidently declare that in my personal story, I emerged victorious. Dear beloved audience, from the bottom of my heart, I want to express my deepest gratitude to each and every one of you for taking the time to listen to my life story today. Every moment you have spent with me on this journey of revisiting these painful chapters of my past means the world to me. My life has been filled with challenges that no one ever wishes to face. But the message I want to leave with you is this. No matter how dark life may seem, we always have the power to choose how we respond. It is not what happens to us that defines who we are, but rather how we rise after each fall that truly shapes the value of our lives. I have chosen to forgive, to embrace happiness, and to leave the past where it belongs, behind me. And I believe that each of us carries the strength to do the same. I would like to extend my special thanks to the founder of Grandparents' Memories for creating a meaningful space where stories like mine can be shared. Through their vision and dedication, the invaluable lessons of the past have the chance to touch more hearts. If my story has resonated with you, please consider subscribing to Grandparents' Memories and giving this video a like. Every subscription and every like is a great encouragement for us to continue our mission of preserving and spreading these precious life stories. And don't forget to stay tuned for more stories on our channel. Each story is a journey, a lesson, and a source of inspiration that I believe will bring you immeasurable spiritual value. Once again, thank you from the bottom of my heart. My name is Eleanor Thompson, and it has been an honor to share my life story with all of you today.